First of all, welcome all. Thanks a lot for attending this. Hope you had good lunch and still alive. So, not very sleepy. Um, Today we are here for the panel discussion around how technical should be your PM. I'm Yogini. I'll be moderating this session. I am co-founder and CTO of Peerlist, a professional network for developers and designers, where you can create your profile, hire these people. Happy to have Shailesh and Sudarshan here today with us. I would love to ask them first about their background, their introduction, and then we can dive deeper into the topic of how technical should be your PM. So, yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Yogini. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Shailesh Hegde. I'm the VP of Product and Product Marketing at Hubilo, which is a B2B webinar platform. My background got into product about 8 years ago. Before that, I was in engineering, having a QA background. So made my way through my product journey and have hired PMs as well over the last few years. This topic is like something that's always been fascinating to me, having experienced hiring both on this side and being on the engineering side, interacting with PMs, and just the nuances of how things work in a team setting. I'm looking forward to this discussion. Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Sudarshan. I'm very excited to be here, talk about this topic. Small background, after studying engineering in 2013 and working in an investment bank for a couple of years, I started my own firm in truck aggregation named Let's Transport back in 2015. Spent a decade building it into a $100 million business. Played several roles, all the way from selling to truckers to enterprises like Coca-Cola's of the world. And also struggled with convincing internal business teams, even though as a co-founder, convincing internal business teams, convincing designers, convincing engineers more often than not, to build what I really wanted them to build. Saw initial products biting the dust, not going anywhere, encountered multiple failures in the first 2 years, and then learned how important and widely misunderstood the topic that we are going to talk about is. And love to be here with Shailesh and with Yogi. I think they're doing stellar jobs and a proper podium to decrypt this topic. So absolutely looking forward to this.
Well, glad. I would love to start with the topic I think every early stage founder would have, that it's good to have PM, but when is the right time to hire your first PM? Maybe we can start with that and then elaborate more, because the topic is very long. I guess it will be very interesting conversation. So what do you think, when is the right time to hire your first PM?
Yeah, so I think we did not hire, okay, there can be a gamut of answers to this, of course. Talking about Let's Transport, we started in 2015, and I was 23, 24 years old back then. And practically speaking, I had no clue what a product manager does. So we were a bunch of people who were selling to enterprises and a bunch of people who were selling to truckers that, hey, come on the marketplace, and we solve a bunch of use cases in terms of the turnaround time and making sure that you can discover the most efficient truckers at most efficient prices on this platform. And we started building the product by sharing our insights from whatever we learned with our engineers. So our engineers just start putting something together. And this is what I just alluded to when I said our first product failed. So after 6-8 months of good heavy lifting on the engineering side of things, we launched our product, which was adopted by single-digit truckers. So hardly 5 cent truckers adopted it. It was heavily functional in nature, lacked the essence of what a typical trucker persona is, what will be his appetite to ingest an application from which he can earn, lack the premise of how to trust this application, right? So, and that is where I started understanding how heavy work does product play. So the way I see it is there are three large boxes, or there's three large buckets which anyone needs to play forget PM, anyone, either a co-founder or a founding team member needs to play, which is understanding value, of course. That is one where we say, hey, there's a business to be made. The other one is understanding usability. And this is which is heavily a PM's work, while a co-founder can shout in the whole world and say, hey, we can do justice, a marketplace is needed, but will the users use it? What is their, what are gonna be the key hindrances when we are building this, a software product to be adopted by masses? Where is it gonna plateau or not even pick pace? I think that is one. And the third one, of course, is feasibility, where the engineers do an extremely good job and say, hey, this something like this can be built, right? And I think someone in the co-founding team or the initial founding team needs to play this role. They need to understand the usability of a product along with value, which anyways there are spokesperson who are doing that, and the feasibility, which anyways engineers will come in and say that, hey, can be built, cannot be built. So usability is something which PMs heavily bring in. And if I could go back in time, either I would start playing that role much earlier in my journey by understanding or becoming a PM myself, uh, or by hiring a key founding team member who's a product manager, who understands how to understand the right persona and build for him.
To add to that, I guess I will know when to hire the first PM when I start my own company, which I'm looking forward to. But I feel a generalist role, someone who you can rely on to do like a few things. I think that would kind of maximize user research, become like going out and talking to prospects and understanding what their pain points are, all of those things. That is also takes a lot of skill, because when you synthesize that and then build the right product, I think the rate of failure goes down. So my suggestion would be to have more of a generalist to start with. And I think to Sudarshan's point, try to delay that hire, I suppose, to an extent where you have some traction, and then you can offload like a certain part of the product building journey to this particular person, and then you can focus on other areas of the business.
When you mention about certain journey of a product, that brings a very important thought process that I think hiring for, say, developer or designer is pretty easy, because I know I'll need a backend engineer in XYZ technology. But when you are thinking of hiring a PM, it's a very large domain. You can pick anything, whether that PM should be metric focused, or he should be a person who is shipping things fast, getting things done. So what should be a correct persona, how we can go for it, how you can pick that. And that is when it comes to how technical it would be, he would be. But yeah, how to find or define that persona for a PM?
I suppose science and art, like a combination. And let me talk about a more later stage company, something that I have experienced. And this is from the current company that I'm at, which is Hubilo. And video is a core part of Hubilo. And when you think of video, you may think it's extremely technical. You need to understand the bits and bytes, which is true. But the science and art of it to me was, I actually ended up hiring someone from a design background to lead the video part of the product. There were two things. One, this person had done a little bit of video, like almost like camera video stuff, which is not the tech that we have. But that person was very interested in video. And the person also is very interested in trying out a product role from being a designer. So I saw that hunger in that person. So that is one. I feel that hunger needs to be there, even if you don't have the skill sets on day zero. And this person gave a very strong indication that he could learn things quickly, and even would not get intimidated by something as technical as video, right? So that was the gut part of me that said, okay, let me actually take a bet on this person. The science part then comes back to, can this person talk to customers? Can this person talk to engineers? Are they the type who, they are, their personality should be something that aligns with the rest of the organization. So those are the things that you can actually have a checkbox for. But there are certain other things which you have to take a bet on, where you have to then think, okay, if I hire someone who's got like 3 years of video experience, but because of that, they may not think creatively or out of the box, things like that, then you have to actually take a bet on the person who does not have experience but could be a lot more creative.
So when I was asking this question, Sudarshan had a very strong note. So would love to understand what are your thoughts around this.
I think, see, a PM's job is, and maybe before answering this question, I would love to understand the mix of audience. How many of you are actually looking to hire PMs versus how many of you are actually looking to break into product management? How many are aspiring PMs, if I may? Quick show of hands, maybe? Awesome. And how many of you are like people who are looking to hire PMs? Okay, great. And how many are engineers who are maybe trying to understand how technical should a PM be? Okay, awesome. I see that there's certain complexities that you're facing with your own PMs in your companies. Yeah, coming back to the question, see, a PM's job is, I think, widely seen as hustle. And I think from early stage to late stage, a PM's job matures from 80% hustle to 20% hustle. It grows structured over time as the company progresses. The number of experiments, the maturity of sister functions in the business side, design side, engineering side also matures as a startup scales, right? So you would see a PM hustling a lot more in the early stages and maybe becoming more structured in late stages. But there's a common framework that you should always look at when you are working with a PM, right? A PM's business wants to make money, right? Engineering wants to ship out code successfully, of course. The PM is in a software company, a PM's large role is delivering the core value proposition. And that is how it should be seen. And very good firms are able to marry the core value proposition with good revenues, right? So how I see it is, a PM's North Star will always be the core value proposition. And if he's marrying it well with business, he will be able to generate revenue out of it. A typical example from Let's Transport would be our core value proposition is not making money, not taking our take rate on the transactions done, but making sure that our enterprises, that when truckers are discovered from our platform, and for example, let's say Ola, right? So we are Ola in trucking, for example. So when anyone is booking a truck or a cab, cab coming successfully on time, this is the metric that you optimize for. This is what the PM will always gravitate towards. This is the core value proposition that he would always want to deliver. When you look at a platform like Netflix or any other content platforms that we see, the core value proposition is what a PM will most likely be gravitated towards, and that is how he'll structure himself, how to get things like what is needed from business, what is needed from technology. But in essence, if the users are receiving core value proposition, a PM should always just aspire to do that. And then everything else starts falling or getting aligned to that North Star. And I think that is one thing which stays common throughout the journey of any PM in any company.
And since there are more audience around engineers and people who wants to hire these PMs, one thing which is always very, very controversial is the relationship between a PM and the entire other team. I would say specifically developers. So do you think that being a technical PM might help have that relationship better, or what is the role of being a technical PM versus non-technical PM would play a major role around how the team bonding is, how closely they are working? So what are your thoughts around it?
I suppose it depends on the company, the stage of the company. To me, it all starts with some type of expectation setting or knowing what type of person do you want to hire and to fill what type of role. Right? If you need someone whose job is to go understand from the market what the needs are, that takes a different type of role. If you want someone um, who's extremely technical in the sense that can speak to engineers in the language of code, that is like one form of PM. Other PMs could be very, very design oriented, which is also a skill. It's very hard to find someone who does everything extremely well. So I think sometimes companies make the mistake of thinking this PM guy or girl is going to come in and change everything. But it's important for the leadership to set those expectations with the person coming on board as well as from the rest of the team. And I think this is where getting other people involved in the hiring process of that PM is extremely important. First, by deciding what type of skill sets, characteristics you're looking for, and then bringing even the engineering team or one person in the interview panel and not keeping it in a silo. I think that is important. And then, of course, it is about how you onboard them. You kind of teach them about the business, about the technology. And a couple of examples of the type of expectation setting you can do is you want your PM to be able to contribute to, say, architecture discussions that the engineering team is having. Because those have implications on the product success. For example, the Ola example that Sudarshan gave, if you want to optimize for time of arrival, there's so much stuff happening in the background, right? And the PM should be able to understand some of those nuances so that they can have a healthy debate with the engineering team. And that's when I guess there's mutual respect also that gets developed, right? Otherwise, if you have this high, like a hand-waving PM who's only asking for stuff to be done but doesn't care to go a little deep and understand what are the challenges that the team is facing, they don't earn that kind of respect as well.
Right. So do you think that if a PM is technical, maybe they can understand better the developers' pain points or designers' pain points, and that is how we can ship better, whether it is features or time estimates or anything around it?
Yeah, and again, going back to the expectation setting that I mentioned, which is if that particular person is not highly technical, can they kind of come up to speed over the next quarter around specific aspects of this particular company's architecture and all of that? If that expectation setting is there and the person is willing to do that, then I think a quarter later you'll see like a lot better alignment. So to me, it's about clear communication across the board versus assumptions and all of those coming in. And then that's when the misunderstandings or assumptions of not being competent enough come into play.
What do you think, Sudarshan?
Yeah, I think I so much agree with Shailesh. So I'll try to break this down and maybe take a small segue over here while answering this. You will see typically PMs coming from three backgrounds. One is business background, one is design background, and the third one, of course, is the engineering background. Now, typically in way more technical products, or let's say when we are talking about building horizontal infra companies or data management or data infra platforms, you will see a lot more technical product managers over there. Maybe sometimes also a mix of business PM and a TPM, a technical PM in these places. And when you come to see some of the use case driven industries, let's say handling sales pipelines for a D2C platform, you might not need that heavy technical PM. A business PM with a decent understanding of tech might do the job, right? So largely agree that it depends on the industry, depends on the maturity of the company, which PM, how technical does a PM need to get? Short answer would always be he needs to be technical, because at the end of the day, we are delivering value over a highway of technology, whether it's software products, whether it's D2C. Unless I'm running a brick and mortar store, and which also, by the way, I become a consumer of a lot of software in that case, you always as a PM need to be technical. How technical is a question of what is the background that you're coming from, what is the sort of product that you're looking to deliver, And in every product, there are going to be users, irrespective of who the buyer is. There are going to be users. And do you understand the user's pain point well enough is going to be a key metric. And then can you become an adapter which understands that value, breaks it down, and takes it to your engineers to deliver value, to build products without writing lot of junk code or abstract code which will anyway go obsolete or might not end up shipping the right product, right? So I think there is definitely enough merit in being technical. Um, and I don't think it is that tough. I have seen in my own organization people not understanding engineering good enough. But then over time, what we started building as a practice is sitting with engineers, understanding HLDs, LLDs, high level, like the system arc. And it just needs reading, right? Anyways, you're not hands-on coding as a PM. I asked my engineering teams to help PMs mature uh, to guide them. See, at the end of the day, we are a team which is functioning. It's not a product team versus engineering team or a business team. It's the overall value which is being delivered to the end consumer. So if I were a PM sitting over there, I would probably go back and think, where am I facing difficulty in talking to my engineering counterparts? Do I not understand what the technology is? Do I not understand what the network is or how we are storing our data? And I would just read about it or maybe talk to my engineers. If I am an engineer sitting in the audience today, I'll go back and say, hey, in order to make my company win, in which direction should I push my product counterpart so that he starts doing justice to understanding the feasibility when he's coming up with some ideas? Can he narrow down some corner cases himself rather than me jotting it down for him, right? And I think it just needs consistent 1.5 hours from the 8-hour schedule of a PM to just read deeper on the engineering side of things. And I think with all the resources available today, that is becoming easier and easier.
Right, agree. So I would love to give you both one very hypothetical situation just to understand very in depth of how this works. So suppose you both are founder of a company with 20, 30 people team. Maybe you are now thinking of hiring one more PM or your first PM. And you have two personas. One, an engineer who wants to turn themselves into a PM role. And second is a hardcore business person who wants to learn a little bit of technical things and become a PM. So what would be your thought process around hiring both of them? And what maybe advice you would give to such founders and such personas for applying to the PM role?
Let me answer that with an example. So let's take the example of my current company, which is Hubilo, a B2B webinar platform, video, marketing tech, all of those things. I would first look at essential ingredients in both of them. And I think the early signs of that are seen even in the current role that they're playing. For example, the engineer person will show signs of, hey, if it's a front-end engineer, they maybe have a perspective on the UX of that application. If they're a back-end engineer, they may have some perspective which tells you that, oh, this person is actually thinking a lot from how the end user experience is going to be. So that's kind of a sign. Or they ask a lot of questions about how is this thing being used out there in the field, right? So they're very curious about whatever I'm building, is it even being used? The essential ingredients on the other side for the business person could be that they take a keen interest in, again, the entire product development, shipping, retrospective, customer feedback cycle, as opposed to only thinking about, so many customers and so many sales, all of those things, right? So those essential ingredients and early signs are something that I would look for. In this particular example of Hubilo, I would be inclined more towards the engineer person to take on the PM role because I think the nature of the product that we have and the nature of the market in which we are. Someone with that stronger technical background may be able to adapt themselves better into the PM role while coaching this person to understand the business better, to understand how new business marketing works, how retention works, all of those aspects are, I think, things that I would find it easier to coach that person over. So that's how I would decide between the two for this example of Hubilo.
Yeah, I think the framework that I would use over here is when you're a team of 20, 30 members and you are sort of, if you're as a co-founder, maybe you're trying to play the role of a PM for some time, and maybe now at a point where you're looking to hire someone, it would happen for a reason, right? So one common reason is you have run out of bandwidth. So if you have run out of bandwidth and you are hiring, can be one reason. And at that point in time, you might want to think, okay, I want to basically horizontally scale. I want another brains who is sitting with me and going to do the legwork on shipping out products. And maybe by that point, you would have encountered failures or things that you'll have had to rethink of while building products. You would have received a lot of feedback from customers, right? And you might want to see where does your product lie in the broad gamut of things. Is it way more functional and lacks the essence of usability, lacks the essence of empathizing with the user? For example, in our case, we had built a beautiful product, but it ran only on 3G network good enough, right? And truckers used to sit in industrial areas. The networks in 2015-16 were heavily on 2G, and their apps just did not load, right? So I think understanding, so what I saw is in my company, if I had elevated someone from an engineering background to become a PM, it would not have done justice, because my PM at that point in time needed to be in the industrial hubs, understand the challenges that truckers are facing in adoption, be with them on the roads some of the days, sitting in their trucks, and coming up with insights. What are the truckers facing? What is the environment that they're working in? And that is the piece which we were missing, which led to our first product failure. So that is, I'll try to do a root cause or quick, that what is the bottleneck that I am facing. If that is it, I'll get someone from a business background or even from a user research background more interested in becoming a PM and elevate him accordingly or maybe hire accordingly. On the other hand, if my product is conceived very well, and you will see this across the globe. Today we look at so many US businesses selling SaaS softwares, and I'm, by the way, proud that a lot of Indian engineering folks sitting in those companies end up creating stellar products. And a lot of US counterparts, are still struggling with delivering quality functional aspects on the product. So in case you are seeing some of the products beautifully designed, the UX is beautiful, the user understands the value, he's able to understand what to do, how to navigate, but is facing the problem on the feasibility side of things, like the product, there's lot of app crashes, there's lot of, let's say, we are not capturing enough data to build intelligence, to maybe deliver value better to the user or to target the incoming users better. If my product is unable to do these pieces very well, but I understand broadly how the design side of things, how the value side of things should be, I'll probably say, okay, maybe I am failing because I don't have a more technical product manager in the team, right? So typical framework that I would use in a company like Let's Transport whenever I'm hiring would be this. And of course, if you overlay this with the fact that a PM to be successful in Ola versus in Google Cloud Services, the background itself will be very different. Right? It has, by design of things, he's building more infra, so he has to be more technical. So that is how I'll think about it.
Yeah, makes sense. So maybe one last question from me, and then we can ask if audience, someone from the audience has any questions. So I have seen, like, building a product has so many aspects and so many pillars to it. There is engineering happening, there is design team working on it, there is a research going on. You have to work very parallelly, giving the time estimates, being present when things go wrong, maybe incident response or something like that. Then there is a pressure from the sales, CEO side, different pressure from the CTO and engineering side. So what exactly will be a role of a PM navigating to all these pillars of a product, and how technical, non-technical, being a product manager would impact these things?
Um, I suppose one thing, especially for a new PM joining a team, would be to spend time in each department for a little bit in their first month or in their first 2 months. That just gives them a flavor of what's happening everywhere. So, for example, go shadow a customer success or a support person for 2 or 3 days. Maybe yourself, once you've know the product, be that person. Like, provide customer support yourself. Go spend time with your engineering team. Be participating in those discussions. Just be a listener. Be in like the leadership or like the co-founder meetings, so that you know what challenges they are discussing. And then I think the PM, if they are good enough, they are going to identify areas that need improvement immediately versus something that they can park for the next 90 days. Because they can't solve everything at the same time. And they will always be pulled in 10 different directions. So I think it's very important for the PM to kind of determine which area needs work and work with their respective leadership to say that, hey, you may be asking me to do A, B, C, but I found in the last month, D, E, F is what I think needs to be done or needs to be looked into, or maybe there is a slight overlap there. And that's when, if I were the founder, I would actually have a lot of respect for this person, because this person took the effort to spend time in multiple facets of the business and brought to me 2 additional pieces of information that I didn't know, right? So I think bringing information to the right people that they are maybe blinded by is an extremely important thing. So I would actually have the PM shadow different people over the first 30 days versus jumping in to put out all the fires. So that's how I would approach it.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think in Let's Transport, in our journey of reaching $100 million in annual revenues in the last 10 years, we had 3 inflection points, which I can remember. And before that, I have seen enough product managers be in the rooms where they are just snapped at by business leaders, snapped at by engineering leaders that, hey, why to do something? And they're just unable to win any arguments on which direction product should take. The first inflection point was when we became objective in what we want to achieve, and we started supplementing, our PM started supplementing their work with data, right? So they wanted to understand what are the data that is useful in order to win arguments, either within the company or maybe citing data evidences from the ecosystem. I think that is the one inflection point that I've seen. So I have seen a lot of AMs get stuck in a job that know by gut this should work. If you just are smart enough to understand that, hey, an engineering leader is going to ask you questions on feasibility of it from a certain angle, and maybe how you're thinking about experimentation, why don't you prepare some data and just use that to convince the engineering leader, for example, or the business leader, for that example. So that is one inflection point which I saw. The second inflection point which I saw is when I exactly started doing what Shailesh said. We started making the PMs uncomfortable. We had a program where anyone who is going to touch trucker payments or even the landing page of our trucker application, needs to spend at least 1 month in the industrial hubs with the truckers plying the roads and get insights from there. People were mandated to either by themselves or accompany user researchers to the fields, spend 8 hours a day. We used to pay them extra internship tokens, by the way, in order to do that, just to understand the user persona significantly well. Because before that, what used to happen is there used to be these amazing people, but their inputs were coming from the business teams, not from the end users themselves. And that is where they could not win any argument at all. They could not, because they did not have their own perspective of what the grassroots reality was. I think, and to our surprise, by the way, when we started doing this, our initial notion was that the PMs would not enjoy it because instead of AC cabins, they are being asked to be in the industrial hubs, see truckers. On the contrary, though, a lot of PM came back extremely excited because now the job that they were doing, uh, they could do it much better because they had all these interviews, they had seen, two small, trivial details like how many phones does a trucker keep? He does not use the same phone to operate with different set of clients and on his personal side. But he will keep all three as feature phones, none as smartphones, things like that, right? And several other pieces. When does he switch off his phone, switch on his phone? Why does he do that? How many times does he get call within an hour? How much of the application button is visible when he's driving the truck and he has to click on it? Things like that as well, right? And we started seeing our PMs become way more empathetic just by the sheer nature of them spending some time with the end users. I think that is the second inflection point that we saw in our journey. And the third one is when they started appreciating the limitations of their business and engineering counterparts. So business has been given a specific budget in which they have to form a pod and launch a, let's say, a feature, and that feature needs to be justified. Engineers have been given a time limit on when it should be launched, or they come back with a time limit or a tentative by when it will be launched. The third inflection point was when the PMs became smart enough to say, hey, why? Can you help me understand? Can I read with you on how you are thinking about conceiving the or designing the product? And can I see which are the pieces which are taking a lot of story points, for example? And let me also go back and think whether I am building a product which is a good to have, need to have, or like, I'm asking too much of my engineering counterparts, and maybe I can go back and break this down into a smaller bite size or MVPs as I'm launching, right? Rather than loading everything up front. So when they started understanding their engineering teams from a metric point of view, as well as from their limitations point of view, when they started reading, I think that is where we encountered the third inflection points where my product function matured and everyone within the product team also started learning. So yeah, I think that's how we sort of saw this play out in Let's Transport.
Right. I think we can just continue discussing this for one more hour. But I would love to stop and ask anyone from the audience if they have some questions. Would be happy to answer them, or we can just conclude this. Yeah, we have a question.
You have to long press this to turn it into a green. Maybe the PM of this who designed this mic should take a note that it needs some innovation.
You can just take my microphone.
So I think a lot of the pressure for the PM to actually be technical comes from the fact that we expect the PM to solve the problems and not the engineers. So is it like striking down upon like separating the two concerns? Is it a good advice, or should we like take it a little calmer? Like both of them are allowed to solve the problems and understand the problems.
So are you an engineer or are you a PM?
I am an engineer, CTO, so like do both
Awesome.
of the things. Yeah.
Awesome. I would say set your team up for success, right? So from a personal example, if I want to go to, if I want to become fit, I'll not take a gym which is 20 kilometers away from myself, right? That doesn't make sense. It will be an hassle always. So if I am someone like you who's an engineer and my larger goal is not to win an argument with a PM or not to cut down my work, but to make sure that the value that I'm delivering to the end user is delivered. So the key goal would be how can I work with my PM and help if I am seeing him unable, like struggling on understanding some of the technology pieces, how can I maybe supplement him with some resources that he should maybe quickly read before we come into any discussions, and that might benefit the overall, like you and him to have a more conducive discussion in building the product forward, right? And if I'm, for example, if I'm writing a concept, if he's writing concept notes and if you're reviewing them in the initial phases and giving him active feedback, if you're writing HLDs, LLDs and sharing it with him that, hey, why don't you look at that? I think that is a good thing to do as an engineer. I would not say tell a PM that, hey, too technical, don't understand that. No, I think that is blatantly wrong. We are at a place where we can do so much with limited fire tank. So I think that is how you should approach it.
Yeah, but not like not asking them to dive into the technical stuff, but more like asking them not to solve the problem, just translate the problem for the engineers and let them solve.
That is right.
Yeah.
You are right. Their job is what to be solved, to understand, to appreciate how to be solved a bit, but not to design the solution. Like that is primarily your job. So, but they should also be able to appreciate what you are building.
Yeah, and a second question. So let's say we are opening up the job for non-technical people, right? How do you actually make it attractive and not intimidate people from actually applying for the PM job?
I think if it's a non-technical person that you're looking to bring on, you need to probably think about what aspect of that role is going to make it attractive for them. For example, if your app requires a lot of like user psychology, all of those things involved, maybe someone who's done like a humanities degree or a psychology degree would be a good fit, but then you have to make it attractive for them in that sense, right? While being that app, suppose it does require like a lot of technical acumen as well, then maybe you need to give more ownership of that or more responsibility of that to the technical team or the engineering team. So it's about like if you're the co-founder or the founder, you need to sell the role to this non-technical person. So then you bring in how this thing is going to change someone's life or how it's going to change a particular business. So those aspects, I think, will be the way you have to kind of push out and advertise to hire that person, while also setting this expectation that their day-to-day interactions will involve technical people, will involve things that they may not understand, but the team will be supportive of them. So going back to a point that I made earlier, it all comes down to that open communication across teams, maybe even having interview panels, which is a mixture of people in your existing setup, and having very clear criteria of what exactly are we looking for in the person. And then the same goes when you're advertising for the role, where you make it attractive based on the aspects that are not technical, but also set the expectation that interactions will be there.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any more questions, or I think we can conclude this discussion then. Okay, you have a question.
They can think clearly.
Yeah. So actually, a couple of things which I do differently, but to see most of the interviews, you'll have PMs who have rehearsed well enough. What I have seen is, are they forward-looking? So do they have a 90-day, 100-day plan of coming in and doing a certain things in a certain way to accelerate their way into creating a dent in the company that they are joining? I think that question works really well for me. The other one is talk to them about, ask them to ask questions, right? So a smart PM if given 20 minutes in an interview, especially with a co-founder, would be judicious enough to ask questions. And the quality of those questions, how much they are structured for him to understand what is in it for him versus how can he do justice to the work, will give me early evidences of whether he is someone who is right or not.
One thing that I do or used to do, but now I think it's people again can prepare for it, is I want to ask them something that they're familiar with, but then I twist it around or I throw them a googly to understand clarity of thought. I will ask them, what is the app that you use on a daily basis or a weekly basis? Like, what's your favorite thing? The first thing that they say is most likely the favorite thing. And then I just give them a hypothetical situation if they were the PM of that product. First, I'll kind of maybe grill them a bit about why they like it and just as a user, what are the things that they say. And then I'll flip it around. If you're the PM, and then I give them kind of a vague problem around that. Or I might change the persona that is using the app. Like just put in a twist over there. And then that shows you the structured way in which they think. Do they ask for a little bit of time to gather their thoughts, or do they rush into the solution? When they do present you their thoughts, like how cleanly are they written down? So that question has always helped me, or nuances of that question has helped me just understand that person better.
So much more, right? So I think our times is up, so we'll have to we'll have to ask excuse. Maybe we'll connect after this. But short answer, that is something which heavily helps. Otherwise, you are stuck in the meetings where there's only things floating in the air. And if you start seeing that happen, stop that. Ask people to share pre-reads. And if PMs can write pre-reads, that gives them, that actually helps them move towards better clarity of thought. Half the time they are only critiquing their own ideas when that starts happening. But very, very good point that you alluded to over here. I think we'll have to wrap with that.
So yeah, to conclude, I think whenever I will be hiring the first PM for Peerless, this discussion is going to help me a lot. So thanks a lot, Shailesh and Sudarshan. I hope you enjoyed, and maybe offline we can all connect with them and pick their brain even more around product management. So yeah, thanks a lot everyone.